Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Chat and Learn series for July of 2022. Can't believe it's already July. On the topic of consistency versus perfection. Such a strong topic, and I'm excited to have Tiffany on with us to kind of go through the details and the strategies and the processes that go through our brain when we look at these, right? I'm the agency owner for Live Free Virtual Services, also known as the Business Matchmaker. Tiffany, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, as always, for having me. Again, my name is Tiffany. I am the owner of Process Prowess, and I help female entrepreneurs start, scale, and streamline their businesses to make them more fun, dynamic, and profitable. I am super excited to talk about this here today because I think that this is a topic that a lot of us, if not all of us, find ourselves at one point or another kind of swimming around in that perfectionism pool, right? And perfectionism, it can easily become one of the biggest enemies, right? That's working against your success. And why is that, right? You'd think that you want to be perfect in order to be successful. But the reality is that you can never, ever reach perfectionism, right? It doesn't exist. And what you really need to do is be consistent despite all the different obstacles that you're going to meet on your road to success, right? And one of those is perfectionism. And I kind of want to start today with a little bit of a personal story. Back in my days of corporate America, I always knew that I had the potential to be an entrepreneur, but it wasn't until I was laid off until I decided to take that leap, right? And I knew I had it in me. I was, helping build processes and improve processes and build departments. So why couldn't I do this for myself, right? So I entered my entrepreneurial journey, and super quickly, my desire for success became a huge struggle for me, right? So I'm over here beating myself up. Like, I've done this for so many other businesses, multi-million-dollar companies, why can't I do it for myself, right? And it took a long period of time for me to kind of get into my flow. But the reason for that is because I wanted everything to be perfect, right? Something that we've said is impossible. But to me at the time, because I believed in myself, I knew that it was something that, I could do as far as being an entrepreneur, because again, I've done it before for other people. So I started developing, my perfect idea. I create the perfect business plan. And essentially what I ended up doing was procrastinating the actual launch of my business as much as I possibly could, because I felt like my ideas and my processes weren't perfect enough. I wasn't really ready to come out and say, hey, world, I'm here. So even when I came to a point where I felt like something was, almost perfect, I was still my own worst enemy, and I was still breaking things down and finding things that were imperfect. And I kept postponing that true action that was actually ultimately going to bring me success, right? And like I said, perfection doesn't exist, and it truly just leads to that type of procrastination and in a lot of cases, paralyzation, right? But consistency, on the flip side, consistency leads to action, and it leads to those lessons, and it ultimately leads you to the success that it is that you're looking for. So when I took some time to take a step back and analyze the steps and the reasons why I was struggling when I first started, I realized that it was more important for me to be consistent and take real action. Duh, right? But I had to let go of that overthinking and that search for perfection. And had I done that from the very beginning, I wouldn't have missed out on months of income. More importantly, clients wouldn't have missed out on months of me being able to provide them my services. So the goal today is to help the audience understand the importance of starting before you feel ready. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's so important. But in reality, you can never fully be prepared for what's to come, even if you've been there before. So striving for that perfection, there's no possible way that you can be prepared for everything. Sometimes you just got to take the leap.
Be aware that consistency is essential for your success. Explain what you're referring to when you're saying consistency.
So if you want to make real progress, like I said, and improve your actual productivity and success, then your consistency is important. And we all know, right, that being consistent means repeating what you're doing, right, or essentially taking action. But with that repeated action, you're going to get better and better. And we all know that. I know a lot of this is like, yeah, duh, but we so often forget and it's really easy to find ourselves kind of stuck in the mud. When you're striving for that perfection, instead of taking that consistent repeated action that allows you to build strength and knowledge and show you those lessons and the things that you couldn't have ever possibly potentially planned for, you're really postponing your ability to improve not just your business, but also yourself, right? So if you're striving for that, I have to have everything right versus I have to actually take action, not only are you never going to start, and whether that's starting your business or a new launch or a new product or service, if you're not starting, then you're never going to reach success, right? And in some cases, you're never even going to be able to experience what true success looks like for you. I talked about, I knew that I had the potential to be an entrepreneur, but I never saw what the success looked like because I never truly got started. I was really busy, but I was never really doing anything consistently as far as taking the right action, the real action that put me on that forward trajectory. So like I said, when you're consistent, you see yourself getting stronger and it allows you the opportunity to fail. And we're going to talk about that. But if you failed somewhere along the way, as you know, the entrepreneurial journey, it's not an easy road, right? It's got problems, it's got failures, it's got battles on all sides. And it's an interesting road, really, that requires you to continue to push yourself. So at the end of the day, like I said, if you've never really dipped your toe in the water and taken that consistent action to put yourself in a position to, fight those battles and things, how do you even know that if what you're trying to do and perfect are really the right things or even in the right ways, right? You can't anticipate what's going to surface once you pull the trigger, or like I said, a strategy or a new offering. You kind of just have to go with the flow and start before you're ready. So striving for that perfectionism again, and I'm probably going to keep repeating this throughout, it's really putting you in a place of inaction. So you're never truly going to be able to, see what that success is unless you're actually consistent with taking action.
Can't see the success if you don't start, right? To be consistent is not the same as to be perfect.
Right. Like I said, we're going to have a lot of repeated messages here, but I just kind of want to break it down in different angles, because at some point that light bulb's going to go off and I know something's going to resonate with someone so that they can kind of change their ways. So again, you need to be consistent in order to make progress, right, towards your goals. And you're not trying to reach that state of perfection. So for example, if you're trying to be perfect with the result, then you're thinking and you're thinking and you're thinking. And we talked about inaction. I talked about being super busy, right? You're just kind of spinning your wheels. And ultimately you can easily spend an eternity thinking or taking inaction by doing the wrong actions if you're not applying your efforts to the real world to check if it's right or not. So the bottom line is the need for perfection, again, is paralyzing you and you're not going to get anywhere. But on the other hand, consistency is not something that is going to stop you from taking action, right? So if we kind of change our mindset into focusing, I need to continue to take action. As long as I'm taking some type of action towards my goal, then the action is going to equal progress. And that progress can be big and it can be small, right? So the goal again here is to be consistent in taking action in order to achieve the small or the large progress, because that's really the only way that you're going to reach your goals in any way and learn from those mistakes and your failures, right? You can very easily put yourself in this perfectionism box and just build and build and build and plan and plan and plan, but you're never really going to not only put yourself out there like we talked about, but you're not going to be in a position to say, okay, is what I'm working on actually working? Is it going in the right direction? Have I spent way too much time on this, right? And again, you've never really pulled the trigger towards the action or the goals that you're trying to make. And we're going to talk about goals next here.
So be aware that trying to be perfect will not help you to achieve your goals. How would you describe this?
Yeah. So as an entrepreneur, you probably have a ton of goals, right, that you want to achieve. We've all got vision boards, we've got to-do lists, I like to call them good intentions sometimes. But again, you can't reach those goals unless your goal is perfection, which, by all means, keep spinning your wheels and keep being busy versus being productive. But you can't achieve those goals if you're not doing something to make progress towards them. And there, like I said, there's several different roads that you can take, and none of them are going to be perfect. So it really starts with accepting that sometimes you're going to have to try something. You're going to have to be, mindful enough to know, okay, at what point do I stop? At what point do I adapt and adjust? But again, not putting yourself out there in that real world to have those experiences, you're going to continue to go down this rabbit trail. So planning or setting up goals, processes, and systems, it's totally different than actually achieving your goals, right? Unless, like I said, unless your goal is for perfection, and good luck to you, because that will never happen. So really focusing on being busy and doing this building, like I said, it's a form of procrastination, and you really have to be careful getting sucked into that planning and building and preparation and that desire to be perfect. Now, not to say that all of that stuff isn't important, right? It's all about having balance. We have to build in order to scale. We have to have something, some way for our potential clients to contact us. We have to have some way to, manage their information or their user experience, whatever your business looks like. You obviously have to have those things, but it's a matter of balancing the two, right? Building, processing, planning, all of those things, but also that taking action, putting yourself out there, and making sure that every experience that you have is a learning experience so that you can continue to apply it to whatever it is that you're building, right? And if you're stuck hiding behind the scenes of trying to be perfect, then you're invisible to the real world. And like I said, you're not just doing yourself a disservice, yourself from a personal and a professional standpoint, but you're also doing your potential clients a disservice too. So again, perfection, it's not going to help you achieve those goals of success. You need to have that consistent action. And you're not going to have that.
You're not saying not to have a plan, right? You're just saying create the plan and then get to work, right? It doesn't have to be perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah. Get enough of something, and no one's ever going to be ready, right? And unless you get out there, you cannot sit back and anticipate exactly what's going to happen. For example, you're writing a contract for a client, right? And you think that you're going to need to cover your payment schedule, how often you're going to meet with them, what they're, hey, the only way that you're going to achieve success is if you take action, all the things that you think that you need to touch upon. But then say you have your first client and you send out the contract and they have a ton of questions about it. And they're like, well, I would feel more comfortable if it was like this, and this isn't included in here. What about the proprietary rights of my, creations? I'm sharing all of my information about my business or my products with you. There's no clause in here that says that you're not going to go tell somebody else, how to go about doing something the same way that I'm doing something. So then that light bulb comes on for us, like, oh, okay, well, I didn't think about that. I didn't plan for that, right? And now your contract is a living, breathing document. So if you think that you're going to hit every point, in this example on that contract that you're ever going to encounter that you can get in front of and get some, written agreement on, that's not going to happen, right? To have a contract is important, but if you don't ever get it out there, you're never going to know what additions, what subtractions, what modifications that you might need to make. So it's really important to continue to be flexible and adapt. And by just, like I said, sitting in that perfectionism box, you're never giving yourself that opportunity to go out there. And what's the point of having a contract if you don't have anybody that knows that you exist to even sign the contract, right? So that's exactly what I mean. You want to make sure, hey, I've got enough. I have a contract. I'm going to put it out there to the world, and I'm going to continue to make those adjustments instead of waiting till you think it's got exactly every point on there that you need and then saying yes, because you will always find a lesson once you put your toe in that water.
And life changes. Things change always. Failure is an integral part of achieving success. We learn from it.
Absolutely. Yes. And I know a lot of this sounds cliche, but it's that, sometimes just taking a step back and being like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this, and I don't know any entrepreneur that, turned the light switch on and was successful after their first try, right? Behind every successful entrepreneur, there's so many failures. And fear of failure is actually one of the 28 causes of resistance to change in many cases. And it can have a really large impact on your future action steps, right? One of the the biggest reasons for my failure was caused by, like I said, my search for perfection, only because I was afraid to fail. I didn't want a client to look over that contract and be like, I can't believe you didn't think about this. How am I supposed to trust you with my business? Or your website is very boring and plain. How are you going to make put me in a position where I can actually scale my business when you look like a little tiny rinky-dink? Those were a lot of the things that I thought of. Why? Yes, like big and perfect, right? But it didn't help me to escape failure, right? When I think about all the mistakes that I made in the process of launching my first business, especially striving for perfection, like I said, it really was just me trying to hide behind that fear of failure. But obviously it would have been better for me to take those action steps and that I ultimately avoided, right? And waited for months and months and lost out on that income and lost out on the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives because I was avoiding it, just because I didn't think ready or that they were perfect, right? But ultimately, when it comes to failure, those quick failures, they really bring us knowledge that's going to help us determine our next step, right? We talked about there's no way that you can anticipate everything that you're going to come through. So if you just embrace failure and accept it as a learning experience and speak to it with your clients, hey, this is a brand new website platform. I haven't quite gotten it as robust as I like, or thank you for pointing that out with, the contract. That's not something that I had thought of, and I'm sure it's going to be beneficial to other clients down the road. I appreciate you. Honesty and transparency are huge, right? But again, in a lot of cases, we can find ourselves going in totally different directions than we could ever have thought of or anticipated by putting ourselves out there and failing and learning, as opposed to if we were just sitting behind the screens, right, aiming for perfection. Failure, again, it's just, and we all know this, right? Nobody likes it. We're scared of it. It doesn't feel good, right? But again, it's about changing that mindset and understanding that it's a huge part of achieving real success. And it's better to have those quick failures that are going to show you the right path and that are going to give you the right direction and lessons and tools sooner than later. Otherwise, ultimately, what's going to happen, you're going to be sabotaging yourself, and you as an entrepreneur or your business are going to see even larger consequences by not taking the right action in the right direction through having learned from those experiences. So that kind of sums up perfection and consistency. Again, I would just want to wrap up by saying that striving for perfection is striving for the impossible. You are not doing yourself a service. You are holding yourself back. It's a form of procrastination. You need to get out there. You need to be consistent with your action. You need to take some type of action. It might very well 9 times out of 10 be the wrong action, but at least now and you haven't spent so much time, money, all of the things, energy, focusing on that wrong action. Now so you can stop, adapt, and shift.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Tiffany, for going through all that with us and having that conversation. I know, I agree. A lot of that is basic, and you think, of course, you should be consistent and not be perfectionist, but like we all do it, every one of us. It's tendency to happen. So thank you for coming on with us this month for July. I look forward to having you on next month. Tiffany Grice with Process Prowess. Please reach out to her for any help and for any virtual assistant services that you're needing. Amber McClure, Live Free Virtual Services. Thank you for joining us. Until next month.